Geoff's Wonderland.
Welcome once again to The Wonderland, a weekly podcast in which I, Geoff Healy, reveal some unusual and occasionally revolutionary thoughts, ideas, theories and various points of view which you may have had yourself at some stage, but were too embarrassed to share with your friends and family for fear that they may consider you a complete loony. And I get that. In fact, I've heard that from my friends and family for my entire life. Possibly because I am almost entirely unable to keep these types of things to myself. And as a result of this, I have no friends left, my family has entirely buggered off, and you Wonderlanders are the only people I get to speak to on a regular basis. Other than my therapist, who I suspect is only in it for the money. No, I'm kidding, of course. Not all of my family has vanished. And one or two of my friends are sticking around, probably just to see whether or not I eventually get locked up. So far so good though. I'm still here, you're still there, and this mental caravan we call the Wonderland rolls on. Now today I've got a few things I want to share with you. The first cab off the rank is going to be a subject which is very much on my mind at the moment, and I think for many of us generally these days. And that is the subject of travel. Now, there's always been travel, there'll always be travel, whether it's travelling for work or travelling for a vacation. And although some people are by nature more nomadic than others, more inclined to get up and go, I think most of us really like the idea of jumping on a plane, getting away from it all, having a change of scenery, and maybe seeing how people live in another part of the world. Or even another part of the country, depending on where you live. Anyway, with all that in mind, we've now coincidentally arrived at the most popular segment of the show, without which the Wonderland would be something other than what it is. Probably a lot better. Yes, it's theory time.
Yo, you can't know what you can't know. I'm gonna tell you what I think I know. And I know what I know. This is what I know. Theory time.
And welcome to Theory Time. At the beginning of today's show, I likened the Wonderland to a caravan which continues to, as they say, roll on. And speaking of caravans, I don't know what your childhood was like, but mine seemed to revolve very much around a caravan. Pretty much all of our family holidays as kids were caravan holidays, and so once or maybe twice a year, my mum and dad, my two older sisters and myself would pile into the station wagon, hook up the caravan and head south for a couple of weeks. So for my parents, the idea of a holiday being a getting away from it all thing didn't really apply in those days, because the most stressful part of their lives, i.e. the kids, were coming with them. For 2 weeks of fighting in the back seat of the car, living in a much smaller space than usual, and looking back now, I can't possibly imagine how that could have been enjoyable for them at all. But it was for us kids, and it was always really exciting to go to places that we've never seen before, even if socially, culturally and geographically, they weren't all that much different to what we might have been able to see at home. Meanwhile, the rest of the world, that is anywhere outside Eastern Australia, existed only in geography classes and maybe history books as far as we were concerned. So we were more happy to get into a car without air conditioning and vinyl seats and roll down the windows and hit the road, heading south to see what could be seen for free, or at least very little money. Thinking back now, I'm not sure why we only ever went south, as far as South Australia, in fact. We never went west and we never went north, and we couldn't go east because that was the ocean. But as kids, we couldn't have given a rat's, and we were also more than happy to go merely to places we'd never been before, or at least since the last holiday. In hindsight, I think if we'd had enough money to all get on a plane and fly to Europe or the US, we wouldn't have had any more fun. In fact, I think we would have had less fun because we'd have felt less comfortable with our surroundings. So anyway, fast forward to now. It's a different world, travel is far easier and cheaper, and what we now consider to be a normal holiday will take us much further than we could have imagined going even as little as, say, 30 years ago. But do we enjoy it more? I don't necessarily think so. Don't get me wrong here, I'm not advocating a return to spending hours sweltering in a hot car and being in a small caravan every night and only being able to see other parts of your own country. I also want to say that I love the fact that we can now so easily travel to other countries and witness other cultures and see how life works elsewhere. I guess my theory is that regardless of how nomadic you think you're not, recreational travel is a huge part of the human instinct, and it should be done as often as possible, to wherever. And also that getting away from it all is essentially a state of mind. It means something different to everybody, including my mum and dad, although God only knows what. And also that most kids are happy with pretty much anything, as long as there's a swimming pool involved at some point, and ice cream, and free Wi-Fi.
This is what I know. Theory time.
And that was theory time. Now, one of my top 3 favourite things in the whole world is music. Not just writing it or even performing it, but actually listening to it. And not just things I'm familiar with either, but stuff that I've never ever heard before. And something I find myself automatically doing, particularly if it's something really popular, is trying to pinpoint what it might be that people are so keen on, and indeed whatever it is that I like or don't like about it. And also, what's really fascinating is that it's usually something different in every single case. Anyway, it's now time for Song of the Day, during which you get to sit in the comfy chair with the headphones and hear part of a song you've probably never heard before either, and then decide if it's good or bad or crap or whatever. Okay? So here we go. This track is off an album of mine called Wait For Me, which was recorded in Germany in the mid-90s. It's a song I wrote in about, 10 minutes, and it's called Every Day of the Year.
Well, I watched you walking tall as the train pulled out of the station, and I smiled to myself 'cause I knew you were gonna be mine. And I just can't wait till the next time that I see you. And even if it rains, you know the weather's gonna be fine. Gonna be fine. Gonna be fine. Gonna be fine. Well, I think that I knew from the first time that I met you. And this was more than hello and much more than a how do you do. You're still worried about what I must have been thinking when you spilled your gin and tonic all over my Italian shoes. Hey baby, seems to me you're something special, and I ain't afraid to tell you right here. Hey baby, there's nothing short of circumstantial, and I'm gonna love you every day of the year. Now there's different people every day, they're walking in and out of my life. You never know who's gonna come or who's gonna stay.
Yeah, that's a bit of fun, I think. It's a song that I haven't thought about for a long time, and I dug it up the other day, not that it was buried, and I thought, that's not too bad. So anyway, if you'd like to hear the rest of that, just go to your favourite streaming service and they will have it right there, and that includes YouTube. Now, we have arrived at a very special part of the show, and this is usually a part that you'll only hear every 2 weeks, and that makes it a semi-regular segment, at least as far as I'm concerned. But, thanks to the overwhelming response we've had since it began, it's now an integral part of the Wonderland. And so, without any further ado, I present to you the latest edition of
Good Times with Big Geoff
And Little Kev. Good times.
Hey man, you sound so depressed when you say that, by the way.
Do I? Do I kind of go,
Let's try it again.
Okay. You Kev, good times.
No,
No,
Geoff.
like really?
Yeah, like really,
you want up?
Shall I try it?
Yeah, please, you go.
Jeff, here we are, man. It's good times with Big Jeff.
And Little Cat. No, but we've
done that
We did
already.
that.
Okay.
We did that earlier.
So we can't do it again?
No, we can't do it again.
It's like reinforcing a good theme, right?
Yeah, it's too much of a good thing.
Speaking of a good thing,
What's a good thing?
theme?
Have you got good things?
I do. I'm not sure. Does everybody know I'm from Canada?
No, no one knows
Okay,
it.
I'm from Canada.
Unless they know it.
I am.
Are you?
I am.
I know that. Do they know that? They
So,
might know that. They know
might.
it now.
They might. They know it now.
now.
Now they know it.
Yeah.
I wanted to bring up the subject of, and maybe it's crazy. Maybe it sounds crazy to you.
It sounds crazy already. I don't know what it is, but
Canoeing versus kayaking.
that's crazy. Yeah.
Yeah. Have you done either one of
Are
those?
they?
Jeff?
Well, I've been in a canoe, years ago. It looked like one of those Indian things, with a sort of each end turned up a bit, and you sit in it with someone else, and you paddle, and away you go. But it was,
Is it a boat? What is it?
it's a boat with people in it.
Yeah. Is it stable? Does it feel
No,
stable?
I can't. It's been a long time, but
Can't
I think.
stand up and walk.
I know, oh no, you don't want to stand that up in that sucker,
Yeah.
and you wouldn't want to spend a lot of time in it either because it's not exactly that comfortable. Clearly a canoe has a message, and the message is get out.
There it is.
That's it, pretty much.
Get out.
But Kevin, from what I understand, being in a kayak is a different experience, and I think you need to explain that to us right now.
Being in a kayak, I haven't done a lot of kayaking. I did a little bit of canoeing in Canada, and then I did some canoeing in southern France, which was kind of a disaster. We lost everything in the canoe, but kayaking was really, really cool. I was on kind of a meandering river in Nova Scotia, and there were no rapids or anything like that, so it was really cool. But it's like driving a turbo car,
Right.
It's like direct power. So like there's one person you're like enclosed in this, you're like an extension of, the kayak is an extension of you in the water.
So what you're saying
so you
is
feel like you are in the water.
So you're like wearing the canoe.
like it's like a jacket.
Did
or
anyone
something.
ever like develop a canoe where you can actually stick your legs through the bottom and then you get out of the water and you just walk through the forest with the canoe still attached to your waist, and then you get to a cafe and you sit down, you've got the canoe on, people say, would you like a cup of coffee? And you're like, yes, thanks, and a sandwich, please, can I have a sandwich? And a cup of coffee. They bring you the sandwich and the coffee. You're sitting there with a canoe. No one can sit next to you because the canoe's so big it takes up the entire bench.
Wow, man.
Has that
You
ever
have a
happened?
very fervent imagination.
It's just a thought.
Jeff.
It's just a thought, Kev.
It's a thought, man.
Anyway, I'm
It's
sorry.
a really
I
weird
didn't-
one.
Yeah, but continue, please.
Where do I go from there?
I don't know.
I don't know either.
But are you telling us
What I'm
about-
saying is that it feels way different.
Right.
Because like you have this like water. I don't know. It's like you sit in the kayak, and then there's this thing that comes around you, and you tie it off. So you're away from the water, but when you're sitting in it, you feel like you are the water.
Right.
It's kind of like between skiing and snowboarding. Skiing, you're like on the snow, and snowboarding, you are the snow.
But you don't need any snow to go kayaking, obviously.
No, you don't, Jeff.
No.
This is like a non-frozen
Oh, all right. So there's no snow
version
involved,
of like
and you don't go
there's no
downhill
snow.
or anything?
I'm from Canada, but like it's not frozen the whole year
okay,
round.
okay.
By the way, I'd like to point
Sure.
out something.
Please.
In the middle of summer, we used to have people that came from another country within North America.
Right.
I'm not sure if you know other countries within
there's
North
one
America. Doesn't
kind of-
matter. Doesn't matter. Don't say it out loud.
No, I'm just not. I'm not
and they
sure what
would
it would do.
drive up to Canada with skis on the roof in the middle of summer, wondering where they can ski.
Maybe they're water skiers.
But they weren't water skis.
Are you sure?
though. I'm sure.
Did you ask them? Did you stop them and say, "Excuse me, are you water skiing?"
I didn't personally stop them, no.
All right.
But it was common that there were people would come up from various countries within North America.
Probably not towing a boat.
Like many countries within North America.
Okay.
There are many countries.
Right. There are. There's
Yeah.
a few. Yes.
And they would come up from all of those countries
Right,
in
yep,
North
mhm.
America
Those countries,
in their
yes.
cars
Yes.
with skis on the roof in the middle of summer, like July, August.
Right. Not towing a boat.
No boats, skis.
Just but not.
And they would ask people local, like in Nova Scotia. I mean, there are other parts of Canada where you can ski, I think, year round, like out west. But in Nova Scotia, there's no chance. In the summertime, it's not hot, but it's there's not snow. There's no snow.
Okay.
So they would come up, and we'd have to try to. Yeah, I mean, we're Canadians. We're polite, So we would say, "Hey, stupid, there's no snow here."
And
Is
would
that
they say,
polite?
"Well, isn't that a lake? We want to go water skiing."
Yeah, but have Have you actually skied?
I've water skied, yeah, I have. And the snow skiing, I've done that.
You've done that too?
I've done that too.
Okay.
I have.
So you know the difference, right?
But I never saw a canoe on the slopes at all.
I know that. But now I'm over the canoe.
Oh, okay, sorry, I thought we were still talking about canoes.
So what I'm saying is that the canoeing and kayaking are different things. I just wanted to point that out.
I never saw a kayak on the slopes either.
No, me either. That's what I'm saying.
Theoretically, you could use a kayak on the slopes. Theoretically, think about it. The top of a ski run in a kayak, boom. Think about it. Kevin, it's possible.
It's so wrong.
Yeah, and dangerous too, probably, but possible.
But that's a possible Olympic thing, do you think?
No.
Good times with Big Geoff
and Little Kev. And Big Geoff and Little Kev will be back right on schedule with another mind-boggling edition of Good Times in just 2 weeks. Now it's time for the second most popular segment of the show, or at least the second least popular, depending on your point of view. But you know, we don't pull any punches here on the Wonderland. We live on the edge and we take no prisoners. And quite honestly, I don't know where we'd put them if we did, so there's that. Anyway, without any further ado, it's time for
Geoff's Thought of the Day.
I was thinking about something. I think it was the thought of the day. I think it was the thought of the day.
Welcome to Thought of the Day. Now, when I started doing this podcast in mid-2020, I decided that I was not going to talk about COVID. Simply because at that point, and probably at any point since then, we've all been sick to death of the bloody thing. Hopefully not literally. And therefore, the subject felt less than entertaining. But being locked down in one way or another for such a long time has been a pretty interesting experience for many of us, I think, to put it mildly. You might remember in the last episode I talked a little bit about the phenomenon of control freaks. Now, as much as most of us aren't control freaks, if there's one thing about the pandemic which I found difficult to deal with, it was that for the first time ever I felt a complete lack of control over how it was being handled, how long the bloody thing was going to go on for, and over big parts of my life which I'd always had a handle on, so to speak. My mum always tagged me as an optimist. And so, as is apparently my nature, I've spent a good deal of time trying to establish positive takeaways from the whole experience, at least for those of us who weren't affected directly by the worst parts of it. And one thing I've come up with is the thought that any of us who've come through this with their sanity intact has done remarkably well. Because clearly, humans are not psychologically designed to deal with the ramifications of a global pandemic. Also, quite a few people I know have, by virtue of the fact that they've had to put up with so much of their own company without life's normal distractions, such as work, managed to unload a few unhelpful habits, even if that was just an attempt at creating something to do. I managed to give up artificial sweetener completely, having put loads of sugar and then artificial sweetener in my tea or coffee ever since I was a child. And to be quite honest, I'm not sure I could have done that otherwise, unless, you'd actually tied me to a table for several months. I also became more focused on things like vacuuming, cleaning out the cat toilet, making the bed, and cooking things other than spaghetti bolognese, all of which has resulted in considerable local critical acclaim. And I also discovered once and for all that sitting down too often is actually a really, really bad idea. But more about that in another episode. Anyway, these are, I know, all minor achievements. But after all the frustration and the challenges and the negativity of COVID, and there has been a lot of it, the human race has once again proven to itself that ultimately we are able to get through things. That when the going gets tough, the tough get drunk, or a new flat screen TV, or busy with something or another, and that we're not just gonna take that sort of thing lying down. Unless it's bedtime, or you want to take a more youthful-looking selfie.
I think it was the thought of the day.
That's it for today's Thought of the Day, which brings our program to a close for yet another week. I want to thank you for listening to the show today. And if you enjoyed the ride, please do subscribe or follow the show. And if you've got anything to say, any questions or comments or ideas, please feel free to get in touch with me at www.geoffhealy.com. For now, though, it's farewell from me, and until we meet up again next Friday, keep your fluids up, don't sweat the small stuff, and try to stay out of prison until we take the next exciting ride through the Wonderland.
Gotta get back to Geoff's Wonderland. Gotta come back to the Wonderland. Geoff's